Hi, thanks for joining this tutorial, which is intended to help guide you through completing the school evidence for an exceptional action assessment form. Hopefully you will begin to realize why I will be referring to this form as the pink form throughout, because I think school evidence for an exceptional action assessment is a bit of a mouthful. So let's just think of it as the pink form, because that's what makes it a bit different from the form that we had previously. You might be asking yourself why we needed to make a change at all, and it's a perfectly legitimate question to ask. What I would say is that the previous incarnation of this form was a little limited in what it enabled schools to present to a panel. Hopefully by the end of this tutorial you will see that the pink form gives you a much better platform to illustrate the depth and breadth of the work that you've done to support an individual student. At the heart of this is a need to illustrate what we mean by a graduated response. As a department, we are very well aware that schools are consistently going above and beyond what is required by the Code of Practice. The pink form enables that to be more accurately shown. It should also be noted that to get the most out of the pink form, it really should be seen as part of a triage process. As such, it's useful to imagine yourself completing this form in conjunction with somebody else. Ideally, this other person would be a SEND advisory teacher from the education department. However, there is an understanding that this won't always be possible, but it's worth thinking about whether you could work alongside a SENCO from another school perhaps, or even somebody from within school. By introducing an element of triage to the process, the intention is that the panel itself should become more efficient, more effective, more transparent, and more consistent. Okay, so let's take a look at the form itself. Section 1 is straightforward. It's divided into Part A, Part B, and Part C, and gives you the opportunity to present the student's basic information. It's worth pointing out that throughout the pink form the boxes are expandable, so to a certain extent you can edit it and add to it in order to make sure that all the relevant information has been provided. Section 1C ends with the question about the young person accessing additional provision and asks if yes, where? It's worth pointing out that further down in the pink form there are opportunities to expand upon this, so there's no need to write huge amounts in that box. A few people looking at the pink form for the first time have been a little bit taken aback by the thought that it's going to mean extra work, but Section 2 shows how this new form can actually reduce your workload. For example, Section 2A asks for background and reasons for making the request, and on the previous forms, schools would often go to town on this area and write compendious amounts, a lot of which was not really necessary or relevant. Likewise, 2A should be seen in the context of the whole form, and there are lots of opportunities elsewhere in this form to detail the work that has been done in terms of background. Therefore, think about 2A as being a kind of overview of how we've gotten to where we are. Further detail on background and history will be revealed further on in the form. Section 2B is an opportunity to describe the young person's strengths, which has always been a feature of the EA process and remains so in this form. Section 2C and Section 2D of the pink form is where the panel expects to be able to read the student's view and the parent's view. This is not advisory. It is compulsory. If it has not been possible to attain the student voice or the parent voice, it is still permissible to submit an EA application, but the panel will expect to see a detailed explanation of why that information was not presented. As with the previous form, Section 2E, the way forward, is very much the pivotal element of the entire process. In fact, it might be advisable for a SENCO to start from Section 2E. This is where the panel asks what the school doesn't have at its disposal now, that it would require in the future to meet the child or young person's needs. The SENCO needs to be very confident that all elements of what is ordinarily available have been exhausted and that this child or young person needs something exceptional which can only be accessed through a record of need. Again, this is why triage is so valuable in this process. The panel does not like to reject applications for exceptional action. The most likely reason for an exceptional action application to fail at panel is when schools have been unable to adequately address this central question. In the previous form, schools were asked to identify one or more of the 4 broad areas of need as the basis for the application. In Section 3A of the pink form, schools are presented with 10 areas of need and an opportunity to identify one or more of them along with some detail of how that need impacts on access to learning. The number of needs identified has no impact on the outcome of the EA application. It is perfectly acceptable to make an EA application based on just one of the 10 areas of need identified in Section 3A. The accompanying description should focus on the impact the identified need has on the young person. A word of warning here. The panel is not interested in the impact on those around the student, but only the impact on the student themselves. Section 4 of the pink form deals with attainment levels. It's mostly self-explanatory and again, it is an opportunity for schools to show their depth of knowledge around an individual student. Towards the end of Section 4, schools are encouraged to evidence the in-house assessments they have carried out as part of their graduated response. This section is likely to have a significant impact on discussions amongst the panel. Section 5A of the pink form is significantly different from its predecessor. Previously, there was no opportunity to assess a young person's support requirements in the context of their pathway to adulthood. Although the form suggests that this section be completed for students in Year 6 and above, it would be good practice for schools to consider the PFA profile of students much younger than this. Perhaps even as early as Year 4. Good triage support will help you to decide. Please note that the bullet point descriptors in Section 5A are not intended to be exhaustive but are there for guidance. Section 5B is where schools are able to illustrate the breadth and depth of support already provided to the student as part of their graduated response. This is divided into the familiar 4 broad areas of need. It is quite likely that most of your EA applications will not have detailed information in all 4 areas. Indeed, it is quite likely that you may only complete one of those 4 sections. Please note that the column on the far right with the pound sign will usually be left blank, but if schools have incurred specific costs, then this can be included. The remainder of Section 5 concerns specialist professional involvement, attendance, and suspensions. Please ensure that the information entered here is as accurate and as relevant as possible. In particular, when presenting a reason for suspension, try to avoid generalized statements. Detailed explanations here will really help the panel. Section 6A and Section 6B of the pink form concern health needs and social care needs. This was not previously available to schools with the old form. In many cases, schools may well be unaware of any health needs or social care needs. Where those needs are known, it will certainly help the panel to make an informed decision on future provision. School-based colleagues have raised questions about Section 7A. It is possible that you may occasionally encounter parents who do not support the EA application process. However, We have a duty of care towards the student, and we have a responsibility to make decisions in the best interests of the child. Clearly, the whole process is more likely to produce positive outcomes with parental support. Ensuring constructive parental support is another element of the triage approach. If you are experiencing difficulties with a parent, it would be advisable to draw upon the support of your SEND Advisory Link teacher. Please note that a school does not need to secure the permission of parents or carers in order to make an EA application, but the school is required to demonstrate that parents or carers have been informed. The final section of the pink form is Section 8, a useful checklist of supporting evidence. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, and schools are encouraged to add any relevant evidence they have. Thank you for working your way through this tutorial. If any part of the EA process remains unclear, please contact your SEND Advisory Link teacher, who will be happy to meet you in person. By the way, some of you may be interested to know that the script for this tutorial was written on Microsoft Word using the built-in tools for dictation and read aloud. The whole process took approximately 30 minutes.